What's up YouTube, ODST General back again with Starship Simulator. Today guys, we're going to be doing the cold start sequence training module. So this thing has been work in progress for months now, and this was supposed to come back in like June, I want to say, maybe July, but it was supposed to come around the time of Steam Next Fest, not the current one we're in, but the last one. So it's been a minute, and that's unfortunate, but we do have the cold start sequence now. The developer is currently still working on the last final touches for this, getting some bugs and stuff corrected with it, but it is now fully completable from start to finish, and it's all voiced out and everything. He did say he wants to get some extra polish done around the engineering section, which I don't know if that's going to happen before or after this goes out to the public and the demo gets updated. But once this is all done and fully squared out and pushed to the public, we should have the Kickstarter campaign starting around the same time.
Cold Start training module. My name is Ava. I'm the UN Space Fleet's AI voice assistant. In this module, we will review the correct procedure for starting up the ship's fusion reactor and then supplying power to the vessel. The ship is currently in a cold and dark state, so for your safety, I have taken the liberty of turning on your torch for you. To begin, follow the
Just give you guys an idea what this looks like without the flashlight. Real dark without the flashlight. So yeah, this is the ship in a state of 0 power currently.
As you can see, the reactor is offline, and none of the ship's systems are powered. Our first task is to provide power to the engineering decks, so let's make our way to the start capacitor's room. Follow the waypoints on your HUD to the startup distributor. As its name suggests, the startup distributor routes energy from the start capacitors to the engineering decks, and also provides the reactor with the power it needs to create the initial fusion reaction. You'll notice the device is already powered because the start capacitors are fully charged. Let's go ahead and get some lights on by connecting all of the breakers. Start with the G-deck breakers, as indicated. And now the F-deck breakers.
So we've now got emergency lighting power on the G-deck, and now F-deck does as well.
Excellent. Now we can see what we're doing. You can go ahead and turn off your torch by pressing T. The reactor controls should now be online, so let's walk back to the reactor. This console displays the reactor's vital information and provides you with full control over the reactor and its subsystems. On the left-hand side, we have the coolant section, which shows the liquid helium coolant flow and the condition of the magnetic field coils. On the right-hand side, we have the electrical section, which shows the reactor's main electrical bus, along with its input and output feeds. In the center, we have the reactor's main display, where we can control the fusion reaction itself. As you can see from all of these alarms, it would be impossible to initiate a stable fusion reaction under the current conditions, so let's fix that. The first thing we need to do is supply power to the reactor's internal bus, so go ahead and switch the reactor to startup mode by pressing the indicated button.
So if it's not obvious by what you guys have already seen, things have gotten a lot more complicated since my last video. It was already fairly complicated before, but it's gotten a lot more in-depth, especially in terms of like startup controls and stuff like that. Now, with that being said, like once you guys do all this in your main game, you probably won't have to worry about most of this again for quite some time, but just to give you guys an idea of like what the ship is kind of going through in terms of like updates and stuff currently over the last couple months.
Now that the reactor has power, we can activate the vacuum pump to start purging the confinement chamber. The chamber pressure should now be dropping. To sustain a fusion reaction, we need an internal pressure of less than 10 nanopascals. While we wait for the confinement chamber to reach its target pressure, let's take care of the reactor's fuel and coolant supplies. Exit the reactor room via the door behind you, and follow the waypoints on your HUD to the cryogenic storage room.
Alright, so like she said, we're going to head to the cryo storage room here. which you guys have seen before if you watched my previous
All of the
videos.
cryogenic fluids that are used to both fuel and cool the reactor. All 4 tanks are currently empty, so our first task is to begin the filling process. Let's start with the helium coolant. Head behind the storage tanks to access the helium cryo cooler. The cryo coolers use a process called magnetic refrigeration to convert gas into a cryogenic fluid, before pumping it into the connected storage tank. Start up the helium cryo cooler now by using the indicated control on its user interface. Excellent. Now if you turn around, you'll find the helium refill valve located on the back wall. These valves control the flow of gases harvested by the ship's gas collection hardware, which is located on the underside of the forward hull. Go ahead and open the helium supply valve now to begin supplying the cryo cooler with helium gas. If you turn around again and inspect the display screen connected to the helium tank, you should be able to confirm that the tank is now filling with fluid. We now need to perform the same sequence of events for the other 3 tanks. Head over to the Helium-3 is the first of 2 fuels used in the fusion reaction. As before, power up the device using its user interface. And now open the Helium-3 refill valve behind you to start filling its associated tank.
Too far away from it.
Next,
There
we
we
need
go.
to start filling the 2 deuterium tanks, so let's head over to the other side of the room. Deuterium, also known as heavy hydrogen, is the second of the 2 fusion fuels. We store double the amount of deuterium compared to helium-3 because deuterium also fuels the reactor's neutral beam injectors. As before, turn on the first deuterium cryocooler. And now the first deuterium refill valve behind you. Next, turn on the second deuterium cryocooler. And now the second deuterium refill valve. Okay, perfect. All 4 storage tanks should now be filling with cryogenic fluids.
Tank
For our next
is,
task, we now need to
and
engage the
tank B
cryo
is.
pump in order to start supplying the reactor with everything it needs. Make your way around to the other side of the tanks and locate the deuterium tank outflow valve. Open the deuterium outflow valve to begin supplying fluid to its connected cryopump. Next, power on the pump itself using the button indicated on its user interface. Excellent. That's half of the fuel mix taken care of. Now head over to the helium-3 tank outflow valve so we can complete the fuel supply. As before, begin by opening the helium-3 outflow valve. And now engage the helium-3 cryopump. Perfect. All we have to do now is take care of the coolant flow. Head over to the helium tank outflow valve. Now open the helium outflow valve. And finally, power on the helium cryo. There we go. The reactor is now being supplied with all the fuel and coolant it needs. Follow the waypoints back to the reactor room, where we have just a few more valves to open.
So yeah, if it's not obvious, if you guys have seen my previous videos, the cryo room has been updated a number of times since my last video. A lot of the controls used to be up here. Now they've all been shifted down below. We've got some extra tanks and stuff here. So we've got like these yellow chiller tanks. We've got some extra pipe work that's now running, from the walls that connects into the tank. So these would basically be the external stuff that you'd scoop up and use to fuel the ship as you're like refueling at like gas giants and stuff like that. And then kind of some more rudimentary placeholder pipe setup stuff here on the other side that will, I guess, presumably at some point come into their own tanks or pumps that feed into the larger ones.
To complete the coolant loop, open the helium inflow valve to start flowing coolant through the magnetic field coils. Now make your way around to the opposite side of the reactor to complete the fuel supply process. First, open the deuterium inflow valve. And now open the helium-3 inflow valve. Okay, great. Let's head over to the reactor controls and take a look at the coolant display. As you can see, we now have coolant flowing into the reactor. This has begun the process of cooling down the magnetic field coils, which must reach temperatures below 20 Kelvin in order to become superconductive. Once the coils have reached their target okay, the temperatures look good. You can now power up the field coils.
So yeah, you can see now that we've actually got the coolant pumping in, everything is cooling down. Our high temperature warnings are starting to disappear. We still have one on this outgoing pipe here, but once we get this all on
With
and
a
ready to
solid
go, that
vacuum
should turn off.
established,
There we go.
the field coils powered up, and fuel flowing into the reactor, you are now free to initiate the fusion reaction. Congratulations! You have now successfully started the fusion reactor. This is only half of the cold start procedure complete, however, as we now need to provide power to the ship. With the reactor now powering itself, you can go ahead and switch the internal bus mode from startup to supply. Perfect. If we now head around to the opposite side of the reactor output distributor should now be powered up. This device distributes the reactor's output to the ship's high voltage systems, which are in fact the only systems powered directly by the reactor. The rest of the ship is powered by 48 individual battery arrays, which we now need to begin charging using the reactor's output. Go ahead and connect all 5 of the output breakers here. Excellent. If you turn around, you'll see the 5 high voltage distributors are now coming online. Head over to the main battery distributor. This device takes the high voltage reactor feed and distributes it to each of the 8 battery rooms on F deck. Go ahead and connect all 8 output breakers. Perfect. The battery arrays should now be charging, but we should perform a visual inspection to make sure. Follow the waypoints on your HUD to port battery room 1.
Alright, so we're going to head back upstairs onto the F deck and go to the external ring here and go check out the battery rooms. Like the other areas, the battery rooms have had a bit of an update for this tutorial.
The electrical supply on Magellan-class starships is divided into 4 isolated quadrants: forward, aft, port, and starboard. For increased redundancy, each quadrant is powered by 2 physically isolated battery rooms just like this one. Should the battery arrays in one room cease to function for any reason, the arrays in the second room will continue providing power to that particular quadrant. Similarly, power to one quadrant can be lost entirely, without impacting the supply to the remaining 3 quadrants. Okay, let's take a look at one of the individual battery arrays. On the left-hand side of the user interface, you have controls for managing the input and output breakers. And in the center, you have controls and information relating to this array's 10 solid-state battery cells. If we did everything correctly, all of the cells should now be slowly charging up. For the next step, we now need to connect each of the 8 battery rooms to the ship's electrical grid. This task will take us into the ship's labyrinth of maintenance tunnels, so be sure to watch your head. Follow the waypoints on your HUD to port battery aggregator 1.
So yeah, the battery room hasn't had a massive amount of updates. The batteries still aren't physically there, technically. Just mostly these control updates, a new UI screen for the batteries that's a little bit more in depth than what we had previously to be more in line with the other engineering systems that we've now gotten. As you can see, there's no output bus. A lot of these batteries are not connected quite properly, so we're going to have to go do that now for the aggregators.
Each battery room has a corresponding battery aggregator, just like this one. These devices perform load balancing and also combine each room's 6 individual battery arrays into a single high-voltage feed. Go ahead and connect the output breaker now, which will connect this set of battery arrays to the ship's electrical grid. Okay, 1 down and 7 more to go. Next, head over to port battery aggregator 2.
Oh, I'm running the wrong way. I made an assumption, it was incorrect.
As before, connect this aggregator's output breaker. That takes care of the port battery rooms. Let's make our way to the forward quadrant next.
Alright, that one's already connected. That one's connected too. This one's not.
Go ahead and connect the output breaker. And the same again on forward battery aggregator 2. Okay, onwards to the starboard quadrant.
Again, these 2 are connected here.
Same again. Connect the output breaker. And the second starboard aggregator. Almost done. Just the aft quadrant to go.
Again, you guessed it. Connected. And then these last couple should be disconnected, and we'll get these connected up and be ready to go.
Connect up the first aft aggregator. And finally, the second aft aggregator. Okay, perfect. All 48 of the ship's battery arrays are now connected to the electrical grid. All we have to do now is supply power to the ship's remaining decks, and then perform a few cleanup tasks. We can do most of that from the reactor room, so let's head there now. Follow the waypoints on your HUD to the forward deck distributor. Each deck in a given quadrant is fed by a deck distributor, which takes the total electrical load of that quadrant, and then load balances it between the two connected battery aggregators. Go ahead and connect the output breakers for all 7 decks in this. Okay, now head over to the starboard deck distributor and do the same. And now the aft deck distributor. And finally, the port deck distributor. Perfect. All quadrants on every deck now have power available from the ship's main battery arrays. You'll notice, however, that the ship is still under emergency lighting conditions, because F and G decks are still using the start capacitor's supply. To resolve this, we simply have to switch the 4 quadrant distributors on F and G decks over to the main battery feed. Head over to the G deck forward quadrant distributor. Each deck has 4 of these devices, 1 for each quadrant. They are fed by the corresponding deck distributor. Go ahead. That's better. Now we can really see what we're doing. Now head over to the starboard quadrant distributor and do the same. And now the aft quadrant distributor. And finally, the port quadrant distributor.
You can see little bits of red light kind of going through the wall a little bit, where the outer hallways still have the emergency lighting as we switch over. Basically from the startup batteries to the actual proper batteries.
Head upstairs to the F deck forward quadrant distributor. As before, switch this device over to the main battery feed. And now the same on the starboard quadrant distributor. And again on the aft quadrant distributor. And finally, the port quadrant distributor. Well done. That's the main objectives of the cold start procedure complete. But we have one final bonus task to perform. Follow the waypoints on your HUD up to the bridge, and we'll make the ship...
Alright, so yeah, we gotta go up and make the ship flight ready. We're gonna take the old grand staircase up and get the bridge and everything powered up. So as you guys can see, apparently I managed to skip a waypoint here. I didn't realize it, but the bridge is unpowered currently, so we're gonna go ahead and get back here real quick. And I don't know how I managed to bypass that. I guess I was just going a little too quick for it, but that's fine. It's one of those little bugs to get ironed out before it goes public.
The lights and bridge systems are still turned off, so let's bring everything online. Head over to the A deck distributor in the engineering alcove. Now go ahead and turn on the bridge lighting. And now power up the bridge systems.
So lighting's on, bridge console's still inactive.
Okay, There we go.
And
You
those
have
are online.
successfully started the fusion reactor, routed power to all of the ship's decks, and brought the bridge online into a flight-ready state. This concludes the Magellan-class cold start training module. Good luck, and I hope you'll join me again in future training modules.
Alright guys, yeah, so that was the Starship Simulator cold start sequence tutorial, and pretty much what's been going on with the game for the last several months, as I said. So not a whole lot of other changes outside of that. There's been some other quality of life stuff, a few changes here and there, some changes made to like Earth, for instance, but most of the time's really been going into not only the tutorial, but obviously these systems. So really quick, we're just gonna kind of run back downstairs. Actually, let's cheat this a little bit. Let's do this. Let's go down to the main engineering system here. So obviously some of these were already here previously, but a lot of these systems did see some pretty massive changes. Obviously, like I said, we've got a bunch more piping and stuff. All this stuff going into the main reactor. The reactor controls here have changed quite drastically. You know, the cold storage room, that's pretty heavily changed in a lot of ways. I mean, its basic shape and the tanks have stayed the same, but as I said, we do have all these extra controls and stuff. Everything that was upstairs got shifted downwards. We've got some extra piping and stuff. Yeah, so basically, now that this is mostly done, like I said, aside from bug fixing, stuff like that, and some other issues that need to be resolved, and maybe some general polish before they go live with this for the demo that everybody will be able to play. Once that's all done, then they're going to be going into Kickstarter, and we'll do some more coverage then at that point, I'm guessing. Now, I believe what the plan is once this is all done and ready to go, then they're going to start switching over to some more scientific stuff. So you're going to see some planetary scanning, stuff like that coming into play. The ability to launch probes and all that stuff will be implemented over the coming months. So, as we're getting back up a little bit higher here to the science decks, a couple decks up, we have the various rooms here. Some of these are, oceanography to be, crafted or designed or determined, whatever. But, we're going to have our probe rooms in here somewhere. They're going to launch probes out of the ship and be able to go and actually scan the planets and everything. And then bring the samples back from those planets and stuff. So that's probably a little bit further out, that particular aspect, but definitely scanning and some science gameplay is going to be added in next. At least that was the plan as of a month or two ago. So I'm guessing that's what we'll end up seeing. But of course, as the game continues to update and stuff, I'm very excited about this project, and I do want to continue covering it. So, just keep your eyes peeled on the channel, guys. I'm happy to cover more of this, and definitely hoping you guys are excited to see more of this on your end too. All right, thank you guys for watching. Take it easy. I will see you all in the next one.